So before we get started, despite the following events that occurred in 1932, over the years, there's been a lot of rumors and speculations regarding this story. Now, I may not have all of the facts, but I've done an extensive amount of research, and I believe that this is the closest to the truth of the story that I could possibly get. For today's adventure, I'm in Glendale, Ohio, at the Oak Hill Cemetery. Not for a filming location, but for a very interesting story. But before we get into today's topic, let me ask you one question. What's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the word Hollywood? Is it glitz? Is it glamour? Fame? Fortune? Well, this could have been the case for one girl and her big dream of becoming an actress. This is the story of Peg Entwistle. I'm here visiting the final resting place of actress Peg Entwistle, most notably known for her tragic incident that occurred September 16th, 1932. She jumped to her death from the letter H from what was at the time the Hollywoodland sign, later changed in 1978 to what we know now as the Hollywood sign. These are the events that led up to that night of her death. So there isn't a lot of information to go off of regarding her early life, but the information I do have, I feel, is really close to it. And over the years, people have even went as far as changing her birth date, which is stupid. But with that being said, her early life, she was born February 5th, 1908. And she spent her early life in West Kensington, London, with her parents. And there's some rumors that went around of her parents getting divorced, her mom was dead, but there isn't any information supporting that her mom had passed away. And her father, before he had got struck by a car from a hit and run, he wrote in his will that he did not want Peg to go with her biological mother. And it was signed by 7 attorneys. So that makes me believe that her mother was alive. And then after her father had passed away, her stepmother had previously passed away as well. Mother no longer in the picture, obviously. And after her father's death, she ended up moving in with her aunt and her uncle, and which I believe would be her 2 brothers at the time. So her and her brothers ended up moving to California because her brother had a bad ear infection and almost died. And the doctor told them they needed to move because it was a hotter, drier climate, and they ended up moving into Beechwood Canyon. At 1925, she was living in Boston as a student of the Henry Jewett School of Acting, and Walter Hamden gave her an uncredited walk-on part in Hamlet. She carried the King's Train and even brought in the Poison Cup. And then at age 17, she played the role of Hedwig in Wild Duck. And after seeing the play, young Betty Davis told her mother that she wanted to be just like Peg. And Betty Davis said Peg was her inspiration for getting into acting. So being that she was on tour with the Theater Guild, in 1929, she made a stop in California. Now, a lot of the time she was back and forth between Boston and California, but in 1932 she had returned to Belasco Theater to try out for a role in Mad Hopes with Billy Burke, who is most notably known for her role in Wizard of Oz, which Peg agreed to do so. But she didn't come to Hollywood to make movies. She was asked to come to do a play and was asked by RKO radio station to be in a film which later would be called 13 Women. She had a fairly big role in the movie 13 Women, but her role was to be married to a man being seduced by a lesbian who was trying to get her to kill her husband. She felt that her role was her very best work, but due to studio decisions, her role was cut from 22 minutes down to 12 minutes, basically making it a cameo. So being that today is a nice sunny day out, I decided to just park the car and walk around the cemetery here. While taking it all in, I'm making my way to her final resting place. For those who are new to the channel, I'm going to give you a little background about Peg, and maybe for those who do know about Peg, you might learn something new. I'm not sure, but I'm making my way to her final resting place now, and we're going to pay our respects to the actress Peg Entwistle. So, as you've seen previously, this little pond right here in the middle is basically the center of the cemetery. Now, the entrance to the cemetery is right up this road, down there at the end. It can be seen. That is where I came in at. And I thought her final resting place was somewhere off in this direction, but I ended up finding it, and it is right over here. And this is where we are going to go pay our respects to Peg Entwistle and her father. Right over here. Right here in the middle. Oh, I have a shadow. Hold on. Father Robert S., 1872 to 1922. And Peg passed away 10 years later. So if anybody wants to come out here and pay their respects to Peg, come down this road, come down about right before the pond, look right, look for the Ross tombstone right here, and she is laid to rest right here. On the morning of September 16th, Peg did what she does every morning. She would read the theatrical section of the LA Times, only this time it was a little bit different. She read the newspaper only to find out that her ex-husband, Robert Keith, got remarried, got a new dog, and was making his comeback on Broadway. And previously she had been married to Robert Keith, but she divorced him because he had been married before, and he had a 6-year-old son that she didn't know about. Aside from the news of her ex, she was blacklisted from Broadway for doing 13 Women when she promised to star in Mad Hopes with Billy Burke. So she couldn't get any work at the time, and then RKO let her go because this was during the Great Depression. And she also didn't have any money. But with everything leading up to this point, later that night she told her family that she was going to go see some friends, go out to eat, go to the store, and stop at the library to pick up some books. Well, the friends said she never showed up that night. Instead, she hiked her way up to the Hollywoodland sign, and that's where she met her demise. Her body was then found 2 days later by a unanimous person. She left her jacket, shoes, and purse. Nothing else in her purse was found besides a suicide note. No makeup, no driver's license, no money, no nothing. She signed the suicide note P.E. because she wanted to disassociate herself from who she really was. The unanimous person was a woman who found her body laying beneath the sign. She took all of her belongings to the nearest Hollywood police station, dropped it off on the steps, and then left. She then called the LA station downtown and told them she left her stuff on the steps at the Hollywood station and then hung up. Her suicide note read, "I am afraid, I am a coward, and I am sorry for many things. If I had only done this long ago, I could have saved a lot of pain." And then a couple days later, the police put her suicide note in 11 different newspapers with a description of her.
Now, at the time, she was wearing a dress that her aunt made for her, which was a gift for her first role in Broadway. Her cousin Helen was in the house with her Aunt Jane reading the newspaper, and she heard her scream horribly, and then she collapsed. Her uncle then had to go down and identify her body.
So after the uncle identified her body, she was taken to a nearby mortuary and she was cremated, and she was brought back here to Ohio to be laid to rest with her father. Now, I couldn't find hardly any information as to what her tie to Ohio was, but from what I heard, she had been back and forth from New York City and Cincinnati. That's all I really have for that information, but still a really crazy story.
Basically, the rumor that everybody knows is that days after her death, she received a letter at her home saying she was offered a role of a woman who kills herself from jumping from a high place. But in actuality, that role went to someone else at the time, so it wasn't Peg. However, 2 weeks after her death, she got a letter in the mail from RKO asking her to come in and do a screen test for another movie. Her uncle found out and then called RKO, giving them hell. They said they made the decision 2 weeks ago, so instead of sending a letter, they could have just called. But it's very doubtful that Peg wouldn't have done it otherwise, because many people believe that she was too far gone. Despite all the things that had happened to her, she said being blacklisted from Broadway hurt her the most.
And as you guys know, every time I visit a famous gravesite, I like to leave something for the individual that I'm visiting. Although today I really didn't bring anything personal of mine to leave with Peg and her father, I do have a coin here that I'm going to put right on their headstone to pay my respects, right here in the middle for both of them. And I just want to say that, Peg, thank you for all you've done, and your story is not forgotten. We love you, we miss you, and I hope that you are resting easy. All right, everybody, that is going to be a wrap, no pun intended, on the final resting place of Peg Entwistle and her father, Robert. Now, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I hope that you learned something, and maybe if you guys share this video, that helps get Peg's story out there, which I think that she really deserves. I'm in no way trying to get views or subscribers or anything like that from this video. I simply just want Peg's story told. She deserves it. And with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you guys next time on Jordan's Film Quest.